My name's Peter Merrick, and this year is my 34th year in the industry. And I should have put a picture of me when I had hair, and I was thinner and younger and a lot more naive. Because when I got into the business back in 1991, if you guys remember that recession, I was about to go to law school. And what happened is I started working for a brokerage firm during the summer. My father was a tax partner over at KPMG. And there were guys with grade 8 education who were making more money than my father. And I said, why am I going to go to school for another 3 years to then try to find a job? And I went into the business, and I just have to share with you that there were two things that took off during the early 1990s, especially I'm a Generation Xer, 1969, so I know I look young. I'm not. Was technology and the financial industry. And for those of you who are baby boomers, that was the time that you realized that you couldn't be a kid anymore and you had to save. And that was at the same time that a lot of large corporations that were promising people work forever were letting people go. You were switching over to managing your accounts, and most people thought their 401ks and their IRAs were CDs. They couldn't make the distinction. And interest rates were dropping. And I share that with you because I'm lucky that the markets only went up during the 1990s, and everyone switched their money to mutual funds. Do you remember that? Because this kid knew nothing. And thank God the markets just kept on going up. I've been in every part of the financial industry. I was a professor back in Canada for 12 years. I wrote for CA publications and CPA, so I'm Canadian, but I live in San Diego now. And I wrote for lawyers, and I focused on tax. And I realized that I was highly influenced by the man who lived in my house, because he was a tax accountant. And I had to come to a realization at some point in my life that I couldn't make people money because that's not the way my brain worked. I walk into a place and it's risk mitigation. And that's what I did. I show up in my business. The two things I do now is I sell a lot of businesses and I prep them, and I act as the generalist or a specialist in the area that I'm an expert in. And I also do a lot of cross-border. There's a lot of movement. I'm living in the States. I deal with a lot of Canadians leaving, and that directly relates to a warning to all of you, because the gentleman who took over Canada, who was selected, he is more powerful than Trump. And you guys are going to say, how is that possible? Because he is a central banker of central bankers. And Canada has all these treaties with the United States. So if he's able to implement things in Canada, it's coming here. And what we're going to talk about today is Bitcoin. I've written 5 books, and my books are about questions I have. Questions that the stuff's not out there. I do not come to you saying that I'm the smartest person in the world, but I realize that a question is infinitely more important than the answer, because you're framing it so you're going to search. You're going to search for the answers. And the one thing that I've discovered is a lot of things about Bitcoin and what's happening in the economy and all these treaties and all these changes that are happening, no one can give these answers to. And I've listened to a lot of crypto bros, and I want to share with you something before I begin with the presentation. Because again, I want to be proven wrong. Because if I'm right, I wanted to swear. Because none of us have context. And I want to give you a perspective. Just imagine right now, 2025 is 1913. The United States had not been in war since 1864. Europe and the rest of the nations hadn't been in a major war since the Napoleonic Wars. Just imagine what the world was like. It was the greatest time to be alive in human history. And little did they know that less than a year later, we would have the First World War, the Great Depression, the Second World War, and the Cold War. Just imagine that. I don't have a point of reference. You know, when people are starving, I think about maybe I didn't eat all day. I don't know what it's like. When I listen to a Holocaust survivor, it's a graphic novel to me because I don't have that experience. So in this book, and I want to share with you that I'm going to have the code that you can get my card to because you can get a free download and the paper I wrote on what we're going to be talking about. But what I did at the end, because I know that what I'm going to be talking about happens to be very controversial to a lot of people who are buying into crypto thinking that is their savior. And I call it the crypto challenge. To all you crypto evangelists out there, this is your time to shine. We are throwing down the gauntlet, and here is the fun part. We actually want to be proven wrong. Yes, you heard that right. We are open to being schooled, but you are going to have to bring your best game. Are you ready? And I'll put them in my next book. The one that I'm writing, what we're talking about today, is called The Last Asset Standing. But I want to share with you two concepts before we go through my presentation. And I want to share with you, there's a 50-page source paper that you'll be able to download because I want you not to take my word for it. What I need you to do is to do your own research. And in essence, my business partner and I, we love researching. That's where we come together because we're nerds. And we live in an echo chamber. We love to have information. And one of the pieces that actually drove the second book was a paper that was written in 1996. And when you source this paper, and you can get it, and I've got it sourced in the paper, you're going to be pretty frightened about all cryptocurrencies. So the two concepts I want to actually impress upon you is this, the Hegelian dialectic. Now, if you're in sales, I wish I was taught this when I was in my 20s because this is something that's been around since Hegel in the 1600s, and it's called problem, reaction, solution. And this is what happens in society. They have think tanks, and you can go and read the white papers. These people do not like us humans. They do not like your families. They look at us as if we are sheep and we're grazing on their land. So I want you to think about this while I speak. The Hegelian dialectic is problem, reaction, solution. I have the solution. I want to put you in a cage. So I'm going to cause a problem. And the problem in our decadent society is that us, the people, start yelling and screaming to the government saying, please save us. And they provide a solution that they put in place, and we go there. We go to be slaughtered. And there's too many questions out there. The second one is something that happened in the early days of the Soviet Union. Lenin put something in place which is called Operation Trust. Has anybody heard of that? Well, you guys and me included, we're suffering from it right now. And what Operation Trust was, is Lenin and then Joseph Stalin, they didn't want opposition. So you know what they did? They created the opposition. They would say that there was a freedom group that was going to bring back the Tsar. But who was running it? It was the precursors to the KGB. And they would find people and then they'd pick them off. So those are the two concepts that I want you, I just lost my little friend here. These are the two concepts I want you to think about. Problem, reaction, solution. That is so powerful. It's so simple. And I've been in sales for 34 years. You find someone who, they have a problem, they have a reaction, and in essence, I come in and I give them a solution, and they buy it. However, you got to prepare people for that. You have to break down society too. You have to isolate people. So they'll take Big Brother's answer. So we're going to be talking about Bitcoin, and I want you all to prove me wrong. Have you guys heard of like central bank digital currency? Sounds terrible, right? They can actually control your shopping. They can do social credit scoring. They're doing it in China right now since 2020. And we like to think that we're above it. Yes, Americans are not going to accept it. But what if they put something else in place that could do exactly the same thing? And that happens to be crypto. And what I'm going to share with you are the questions I have. I'm going to give you a timeline. And again, this is all in the paper. It's all sourced. And going in the book, we go back to the Federal Reserve and basically the things that happen there. And there's big questions. The problem is we like Hollywood here. We like having a narrative. We don't really know certain things. And the last 5 years, I've discovered that they can rewrite history and people forget the way the world was. Do you guys remember what the world was before 9/11? Like, I sort of have this little gray images in my head that it was like the best time. The Cold War was over. We were going to bring capitalism to the world. It's not the way we were sold, is it? So I want to give you some background about crypto and about the cage that is going to be put in place on us. And we are 1 minute from midnight. So everyone loves the internet, right? You know the story of the internet? It was ARPANET. It was the US military. They perfected it. They didn't release it until they perfected it. You think you're anonymous on it? They control IP addresses. They have you tracked. They have, I've seen videos where your phone is taking pictures on you. I saw that in Tesla, I'm going to be a little crude right now, they actually were watching people having sex in the car. They've got 6 cameras. Like if you have a car that is post 1998, it's got GPS in it. Who controls GPS? NASA. Who controls all this stuff? Nothing happens in society unless it's ordained. Think about that. Because if it's a real problem, they'll shut it down. And I'm going to be, in the timeline, I'm going to share with you something that was just shut down. And as I said to you, I'm Canadian, and I'm going to share with you what's happening in Canada because it's going to happen here. And that was, if you asked me 6 years ago, I would tell you Canada was the greatest country in the world. It had health care. If you were a business owner, they had favorable tax treatment, everything. It was a gentle country. It's not that anymore. Because if I was the witch in Hansel and Gretel, what would I want to do? Get you really fat so I can eat you, so you can move. Think about that in our society right now. Like that story about Hansel and Gretel, what is it about? It's about two kids that escaped. But you know, there's lots of bones in there. There are lots of people who didn't escape. So ARPANET created in 1969, and it's opened up in 85 to universities dealing with military. It's not until 1995 it's open to all of us. And do you remember Windows where they had Explorer? It was the first time we were able to get on the internet. And what was America Online? AOL? You know, the dial-up? God, my head still hurts just thinking about it. Well, let me share with you what happened the next year. MIT and the NSA released a paper, and it's sourced and you can download it, and there's hot links on the paper that you can download, of a paper called How to Make a Mint. And if you read it, it's very similar to the paper that was released for Bitcoin in 2008. It's almost identical. Remember what I said, problem, reaction, solution, and Operation Trust? Well, let's go through the timeline still. In 2001, the NSA comes out with an encryption, and the encryption is called SHA 256. Everything operates on 256. And you think they released it out to all of us and they weren't going to have a backdoor? Well, we're going to address that in a moment. So then we have 2008. Do you guys remember 2008? That's why you're all here. We're at a money conference, right? Come on, help me out. What happened in 2008? Okay, so in 2001, large corporations started failing. In 2008, banks started failing. And the next time, it's going to be central banks. And those central banks are private. But let's go and look at what happened in 2008. A lot of people got really pissed off, right? Because there was this huge amount of money. Oh, I skipped something. 2001, you remember the planes, 9/11? Well, the Patriot Act was like this big. And really, one of the biggest things about the Patriot Act is it introduced KYC, Know Your Client rules. And basically, your freedoms were taken away if you wanted to buy anything. So think about it. Nothing gets introduced into the economy, into finance, unless it's allowed to. So when people are thinking that Bitcoin is their savior, think about it. There's over $3 trillion that have moved into cryptocurrency in the last few years with adoption. So getting to 2008, the banks are going to fail. So what did they put into place? They basically put bail-ins. You know what a bail-in is? It's pretty scary. They did this in every industrialized nation. It happened in Cyprus. Cyprus, they seized all the money, over $100,000, and they gave them stock of a defunct company. They just seized it. And it was a test case because no one protested. Well, they did it in the United States, they did it in Canada, in Britain, in Europe. They introduced the same legislation. So next time we have crashes happening, you don't own anything. They're going to take it, and we're going to be talking about that. And I address it more in It Starts With Gold. You want to know something? I'm going to flip by this stuff. I'm going to go back to the first one. I don't want to well, I'll tell you what I want to do, because I'm just going to talk. I did this just to keep me on track, but this QR code, you can download everything, and you get my card, and it's on the back. So now I can just talk to you. So we're in 2008. People started saying, like, this is a scam. This is a huge scam. So remember we talked about problem, reaction, solution? We talked about Operation Trust. Well, people were really angry about the banks getting money. Do you remember that the people who actually caused the problem were getting huge bonuses off of federal money? They're being paid off. Well, in 2011, do you remember Occupy Wall Street? You guys remember that? Well, let's go back to problem, reaction, solution, right? The problem is people are really angry. They're really, really angry about what's happening with the banks. So they go and they start protesting. They don't have anything, it's organic, they don't have any major demand, but they're saying we got to do something with the system because it's not for the people. It's for bankers who basically have no loyalty to any nation. So in 2008, when the crash just happened, the Lehman Brothers goes bankrupt, this Bitcoin paper comes out of nowhere with a guy who sounds like a sushi roll. No one really knows who this person is. And in 2009, January 3rd, the first Bitcoin, the Genesis, is released. And this is problem, reaction, Occupy Wall Street. And magically, here's this decentralized currency that you'll be able to trade, that will be a medium of exchange. It will not impact, like you can get off the central bank fiat currency, that paper money that hasn't been backed since 1971, when Nixon took the United States off the gold standard. And I want to share with you, I got involved in gold, not because I'm selling it, I'm not a gold bug. I asked a question to myself, and the question is assets and assets confiscation. Like, what are going to be the last things that actually exist if we have a crash? So Bitcoin is introduced. It's a bunch of little kids, like people who are libertarians. They want to get off the system. Everyone's not taking it serious. It's just the early adapters. It's not the early majority. Now think about it. There was a paper in 1996 that talks exactly about Bitcoin, about having a ledger, being able to make it public, and to put you in a chain, because what happens is, it sounds great, but you're using the infrastructure of the US government. Well, in 2013, do you remember Snowden? He comes out and says, you have no freedom. And I don't have the complexity to actually fully understand it, because I have a wet brain. Like, there's these algorithms that know what you and I are going to do, and it just gathers information. And I want to really scare you. If you go to the washroom, you're sitting on the toilet, your phone every 15 seconds takes a photograph of you. And you don't think they have algorithms that are able to look at whether you're happy, sad, things like that? They're gathering information. But you know what I would want to do if I was satanic? I would want you to volunteer for it. Because isn't that what we do? We volunteer for things. I'm guilty. I wanted to check into this hotel. And before they let me check in, I'm scrolling up. I'm not reading the fine print. We think the devil has horns. No, it's in the fine print, because most of us never read it. So Snowden comes out, and what does he say? He says, you're being tracked on everything. So if I was the devil, what would I do? I would let some people make a lot of money. And everyone says, hey, I got to get into this Bitcoin, right? This person's making money. The problem with Bitcoin, it was supposed to be a medium of exchange to replace money, not a store of wealth. It's not attached to anything. It's not like a table. It's nothing. There's nothing. And in essence, it can vanish. Like, if they want to turn off the equipment, and they could, believe me, they know what Bitcoin you have, and there's questions I have. I don't have the answers. I just have a lot of questions that nobody can address. So 2017, there's talk that the Bitcoin that people are buying is not the true Bitcoin, because there was core Bitcoin, which was really expensive to trade, and they came up with another one, and that's the one that all the financial institutions are getting into. And do you know 80% of all crypto is traded through these wallets, not the private wallets, and now people are buying EFTs, which aren't even an underlying asset. So people have willingly got into it because someone says, I know someone who made a lot of money with Bitcoin. The government can make it illegal. The government right now is planning to completely take it over. Have any of you heard of the Depository Trust Corporation? Have any? Well, let me tell you the story about it, because I write about it in this book because I found it really fascinating. There was this guy, his name William Denzer. He's no longer alive. He ends up becoming the president of the National Student Association of America. It comes out in 1952. It comes out in 67 that the CIA had actually bought him off, and it was taken over, and he went to Europe to do the same thing. And then he joins the CIA formally, and he goes to Panama, not Panama, one of these South American countries, and he goes and puts together the programs to actually influence foreign governments. Well, there was an overthrow in the country he was in, so he came back to America. He took over the banking of New York, and he started deregulating and also turning things from physical to actually digital. And then in 1971, 72, he's appointed. So here's a CIA operator, the Depository Trust, and I will share with you what he was able to do, not just in America, but in the world. He's appointed by someone in charge of the Security Exchange Commission. And let me name you, and I want to know if you guys know your history. William Casey. Did you guys know that? So the CIA and intelligence has always been involved. Always been involved. And during the church hearing back in 1976, we found out where the word conspiracy theorist came from. It was the CIA came up to get people to stop asking questions about the assassination of Kennedy. Because as soon as I call you crazy, you don't want to be crazy because we're controlled by what we think other people think. But many of us are older, so get the fuck you pass and just follow what you know is right from your own experiences. So William Casey appoints this man. And in 86, I remember I was like 16 years old, or maybe even 17 when I was watching the hearings, and his name was all over it, Iran-Contra. And this goes back to the DTC. The DTC, what it's done since that time is it's dematerialized everything. You own nothing. You think you own your stock, you think you own your house, you don't. They dematerialized it, and we are all what's called beneficiary owners. That means if you own a stock, you'll be able to sell it and get money. You'll also be able to get the dividends. But if the banks go bankrupt, when Lehman Brothers went bankrupt, there was a court case that basically no one ever covers. And the court case is, how are the assets going to be divided? And Morgan Stanley was the trustee and the preferred creditor. So no one else got paid. It went to Morgan Stanley. And people don't know that. So if banks fail, and right now, since March 26, 2020, they're supposed to have reserves. Well, they got rid of it. So your bank has no money. And I've heard of it, and in essence, they've got these bail-in rules. And if these things are not covered, which they're not, like the Federal Depository Corporation that everyone says, I got $250,000. They supposedly insure $17 trillion. How much money do they have? Do any of you know? Does anybody have? I'm a nerd. I looked it up when I was researching. $120 billion. Now, when things start cascading, they've actually put all these rules in these treaties, and it all goes to the Bank of International Settlements. The Bank of International Settlements is the banker's banker, and all derivatives and all trades go through it when they're doing settling. Do you know how many derivatives there are in the world right now? What the calculation is? Does anyone want to take a guess? $4 to $6 quadrillion. Not trillion, quadrillion. There's nothing to back it up. However, going back to Morgan Stanley and Lehman Brothers, all the assets flowed up. So if you haven't segregated your funds and your bank goes bankrupt and you're over at, well, give me some names of places, brokerage accounts you guys have. Pardon? Bank of America, Schwab. You don't have to tell me, just give me names. I'm Canadian, I don't know. Merrill Lynch. Okay, so what happens is they've taken away being the custodial of your assets, getting paper. It's been dematerialized. So when you can call it up and trade and everything, it's because they are the owners and you are the beneficial owners. You get the benefits as long as they're not insolvent. If they become insolvent, it flows up. And right now, in 2001, we had companies go bankrupt or have problems. Then we had banks, next to central banks. And they know this. And it all flows up to the BIS, and they'll own everything. So what's happened since 2008? Because so many people move their money into crypto. Like, I don't know, it's anywhere from, let's say, $3 trillion to $5 trillion. The central banks aren't into crypto. You know what they're buying? 1,000 tons a year. So when all these people are buying this thing that's not real, the central banks have been buying gold. They've been getting ready for gold. And I'm going to share with you something that I read about 3 weeks ago about the Federal Reserve. And the only thing about the Federal Reserve is the name. Because no one knows what the balance sheets are. They don't have to prove anything, but they're going to do something that's going to be pretty scary because it's on their books that they can do it. And if they say they can do it, they're going to do it at some point. So in 2017, in the timeline, we've got crypto being split. There's a new crypto that everyone's using for ETFs, and they're using, through wallets and everything. It's easy to trade. And the old one they're saying is only worth $40, $50 still. The other one is worth, what is it trading right now? I haven't been paying attention. Does anyone know what Bitcoin is trading at today? Around? Pardon? 120. Well, think about it. You're not going to central bank digital currency because you're told that it's going to be tracked and it's going to be environmental. It's going to be what ESG stands for: environmental, social, government. Right? You don't want to do that. But what if I got you to line up for something else? Well, right now, the DTC is going to take over all the wallets and all the transactions for Bitcoin and other currencies. They did this with stocks. They did this with your house. They did it with everything. And now they're talking about doing it into cryptos. And remember, they can do it because let's go back what I was sharing with you. ARPANET, that happens to be the US military. That happens to be the current internet. Then you've got SHA, which happens to be SHA 256, is the encryption that every single thing uses every time you get on your phone and you buy something. So basically, they know. And I'll share with you, if you think that they're not going to be able to break it, I saw something about a few months ago that really scared me. There is a computer chip that Microsoft released. It's a quantum chip. I don't even know what a regular chip is, but this thing here did a calculation that would have taken 126 billion years to break a code. It did it in 7 minutes. Think about that. It sliced right through a code that was unbreakable within 7 minutes. And I had to look it up because it said it was 15 septillion times faster than any other computer that existed. Do you know what a septillion is? I didn't know. Does anyone know what a septillion is? Pardon? A 1 septillion is a trillion. 15 septillion. I don't even know what that number is, and I'm sure the national debt will get there. So 80% of all cryptos now go through wallets. I shared with you, I'm Canadian. You know what they did? Supposedly Canada had a constitution. It doesn't. It has a Charter of Rights and Privileges because they took away it in Canada. And I actually, as an immigrant to your country, I actually say that most Americans are spoiled because I've read the Constitution and the Federalist Papers. And you guys have the most incredible document, which you do not fight for. They do not teach civics since the 60s because like lemons going off the cliff. So most cryptocurrency, they've done a study just recently, and it goes through 10 nodes. Think about that. You know what they discovered in Egypt when they were having the Arab Spring? They turned off the internet. You know why? Because there was one cable going in. They were able to snip it, and they didn't have internet. Think about it. All crypto goes through currently only 10 nodes. As a Canadian, I didn't go back to Canada. I'm going to share with you. I didn't go back to Canada because I met a familiamide child, someone who was an adult back in the 60s. For those of you who don't know what familiamide was, it was a morning sickness drug. And it was given during the first trimester when babies were growing their limbs. And they were born with like doll limbs. And I also remember Pfizer paid the biggest fine for selling poison for I think it was back in like 2008, $2.3 billion for selling poison. I wasn't going to be a guinea pig. So I can go back to Canada because Canada was bad because they have free health care. But you know what that card is? Basically, that's how they're able to attract people. That's going to be the social credit. It's going to be your health. They're going to be, you know, when they were giving people money and putting in their bank accounts? Well, in September of this year, the US government is no longer going to write checks to people. You need a bank account. They've already gone to the cage. 92% of everything that happens in America happens to be digital. Only 8% is cash. Did you know that? They need to get rid of the cash. They need to get rid of real assets, and they need people moving forward. So when the wars were happening in the Middle East and the Ukraine, they passed all this legislation that lays down for central bank digital currency. At the same time, you got the DTC saying that they're going to take over all cryptos. The banks are just buying gold and real assets. I don't have the answers. I just have a lot of questions. You know, I have common sense. If something sold to be good, you know, I remember, see, I told you, 34 years in the business. I remember that during the dot-com craze, you guys remember it? Everybody was saying, this is different. I don't know, a business plan on a napkin was good enough. And do you remember that? Like, I remember there was a company, it was the largest one in Canada that ever went IPO. It went for like $5 billion. And I read the IPO. It said it lost money. It didn't have any hopes of making money. And it was listing its biggest clients. It was Nortel and MCI. Do you know whatever happened to those companies? They don't exist anymore. So common sense. So let me just share with you, because we're getting to the end, and I could talk for forever, if you guys allow me to. I'd like to do it. Recently, on the website of the Federal Reserve, and it's sourced, and there's a hot link, you find really interesting things that are pretty scary when you go to government sites, and you go to the World Economic Forum, you go to the World Bank. They tell you what they're going to do to us. It's almost like evil. I'm going to tell you I'm going to kill you. And you let me into your house. Whose fault is it? I told you I was going to kill you. These papers, so this isn't conspiracy theory. These are like real organizations. This isn't like me going to secondary or third sources. This is me going and reading this stuff. And it makes, you know, horrors look light. So on the Federal Reserve, just a few months ago, they said they have the ability to revalue gold and offer EFTs. So the United States supposedly, because no one's ever gone into the check the gold, has 260 million ounces of gold. No one knows whether they do. They don't show us, right? What is Fort Knox? Like no one's ever been in there since World War I. That's why they had to get off the gold standard. The Americans had to get off because the Europeans had stored their gold in the United States during the war, and there was Bretton Woods. And then the Europeans were asking for their money back, and guess what? There was none. So they went on the petrodollar in '79. So let me tell you what's in this paper. They're saying that they could reevaluate gold and reset the price for $20,000. This is on the Fed. And again, it's sourced in the document that you can download. Don't take my word for it. I'm not Chris Como, who's going to go and tell you when the WikiLeaks came out and talked about Podesta and Hillary and all that stuff and says, only go to us because we're the source. Don't go, don't look there, don't read. I want you to read. And I want you to prove to me that I'm wrong. But this is what they came out and said. They said they have the ability to go and write exchange traded, ETF, senior moment, thank you. I haven't been a broker in like over 20 years, so 23 years. Oh my God, I just had a senior moment. And they said they can reevaluate gold and they'll issue paper and they don't have to go to the market for it. They'll just evaluate it, like reevaluate it, and then this will jump up. Now, the only things not known is a history not studied. I always ask, did this happen before? Did this happen before? Because if it happened before, likely it's going to happen now, because you know what the problem with humanity is? There was a movie that came out a number of years ago. It was called I'm jumping ahead. 50 Dates with Drew Barrymore and Adam Sandler. And every day Drew Barrymore wakes up and forgets the day before. That's the problem with humanity. Every generation, by the time you learn something, it's time to leave. And everyone has to start again, and most of them don't know the history. So in 1933, in March, when Roosevelt got into power, he seized all the gold. He seized it all. Safety deposit box, they raided them. Brokerage firms, they raided them. The only people who are able to keep their gold are ones who actually kept them to themselves. So if you go and buy gold, don't vault it. Go and put it somewhere where you can access it, because this has happened before. But then it gets worse. Gold for 100 years, from 1834, was sitting at $20 for 100 years. And then one day, 3 months after he took the gold, it went up 69% to $35. It just jumped. It's happened before. So I just want to recap, going back to what's happened in the past. In my book, I wrote it with someone. It was just us going down rabbit holes and finding answers from first sources, which was scary, that almost every single asset that you think you own, you don't. There have been laws that have been passed that basically say that you are the beneficiary owner. And now they're doing it finally with crypto. And in essence, if the internet was what it is right now, where they were censoring you, they weren't allowing you to have free speech, none of us would have adopted it. So what do? They let it be free. Remember I shared with you? Use it if it's worked. You know, they keep on doing reruns or remakes in Hollywood because the formula worked. And the fact is, people forget. And with crypto, they let it be the Wild West, but they could have shut it down. Why would they let it be there? Like, that's the question we should all ask. Why would they allow this competition? Well, if I were the devil, and I know that Americans have free spirit, central bank digital currency where it's completely controlled, I would have a problem with that. I would say no, I wouldn't participate in it. So why don't you allow these people to go and build their own cage? Because everything that crypto was, it's not anymore. And it's, remember we talked about it the earlier, problem, reaction, solution. People are getting frightened. And while the people, or I call them sleeples, because I don't call them sheeple, because a sleeple has the potential to wake up, while a sheep, it has no. And I think as human beings, we have that possibility. There's papers that are saying that they're going to reset the price of gold. And right now, all, like the BRIC countries, Brazil, what is it, BRIC again? Russia, India, and China. You know, they've been buying gold. And if you look at history about this fiat cash, that's what the money is. It's not real. They just can produce it. They can manufacture it. And if we looked at history, have you guys ever heard of the Yuan dynasty? This scares the hell out of me. They were the first empire, and they were the most powerful empire in the world. They only lasted 100 years. Most civilizations or empires last maximum 250. And I was alive in 1976, and that was a 200. So what's next year? 250, 10 generations, because they show that the people who started, they're, like entrepreneurs, and then their grandkids are like spoiled. Like they call it short sleeves to long sleeves to short sleeves. Well, the part that actually scares me when you look at the Yuan dynasty, and I was at the museum in San Diego on Tuesday. I can go free to all the museums in Balboa Park, and I'm still a tourist. And I see a map of the Yuan dynasty, and it's huge. It goes right into Russia. They went into paper currency. And then what happened? It collapsed. And you remember hearing stories about how warlords happened in China? Well, it happened because the Yuan dynasty collapsed. And it wasn't until the Ming dynasty came, and it was only a third the size of the Yuan dynasty. And guess what they did? They put their currency back onto silver. We're about to have a reset. And in essence, people are running around trying to act like everything's going to remain the same. Do you guys know what normalcy bias is? Normalcy bias is, I have no point of reference of anything different. So I'm going to think that tomorrow is going to be the same as today. And I'm guilty of it. I got up early this morning. I got breakfast here, and I was told to have breakfast. I had to sit into a meeting. And the conversation that was happening was the conversations I would have been given back in 2007. Like, I can't tell you the future, but I can tell you that I know the future by reading those papers if we do nothing, because we're told what we do. So what I'm going to invite all of you to do, my book is downloadable, and I made it fairly used. Because just imagine, and I'm going to leave you with this thought. There was this gentleman, his name was Zev Jabotinsky, and he was reading all the speeches that were happening in Germany and seeing all the fascist groups, all of them. So he went around to every Jewish community that would take him, saying, get out of here, this place is going to burn down. No one listened to him, very few. We all heard of the Holocaust. Well, those 6 million didn't listen to him. The ones who did, their children and grandchildren live in places like America, Canada, Australia, and Israel. We are, and again, I want to be proven wrong. But at this stage in my life, I don't need people to like me. I really don't. Because I've read history, and I got to tell you, I invite you. I had on my paper last asset standing, everything I've talked about and much more. Probably it's a better narrative. Believe it or not, I'm a better writer than I am a speaker, because I get forced with words are linear, so I'm able to stay on topic. I want to be proven wrong, but I'm going to leave this with you. If assets are going to collapse, a tsunami is coming in. You want to get as high as you possibly can. And perhaps it's not going to be high enough so you'll survive, and so will your family, and so will your assets. Because really, when you get older, you realize that you're not going to be here, but you're going to live through other people. What are those assets? Assets in order of asset confiscation. And I sat down with my business partner and we asked questions. And we realized that, number one, it's going to be the cryptos. It's going to be your bank accounts. It's going to be your brokerage accounts. Those are going to be the first things that are just going to evaporate. And again, don't take my word for it. Read about it. Prove me wrong. Because I only learn by being proved wrong. So those are gone first. And then what's going to happen is, like, when that happens, the next thing that's going to go are custodial accounts. Because right now, if you have any of those companies that you mentioned, you don't own it. You're the beneficiary owner of it. But in essence, what we learned with Lehman's, the real owners, and those are the ones who have actually been approved, they seize all the assets and you get stuck with nothing. And they'll put you on central bank digital currency because they'll be able to control you. Because if you're hungry and you don't have independence, they can have you do anything. I would also say go into mutual life insurance companies rather than stock. First of all, they did not change what the reserves are for insurance companies. In banks, they allowed them to go to zero. They still have reserves. In addition to that, the owners are not BlackRock, not Fidelity, not Citi. It happens to be the owners of the mutual life insurance companies. And precious metals. But most importantly, because I'm not selling you assets, the things that are most important are useful skills, community. And you guys are American, we're in Nevada, and I'm Canadian, I don't own a gun, and I don't have bullets, and I can't farm, but I would say get seeds, bullets, and guns, and things that are tradable. And then for your other assets, you get precious metals. And we had some of the greatest people here speaking on precious metals. Like, it's gone up. But forget about it going up. Go to the Federal Reserve, and they're talking about revaluing gold to $20,000. It's on the website saying they are going to reset the value. But to do that, they're going to take it away from you. They don't need the competition, and they did this in 1933. You guys have been great. On my cards, I have the book, and you can share it. I've made it free use. I'm here today because this is an important message. Because you want your house, your car, all that stuff. We are seconds. They'll never pay back the debt. So they have to do a reset. And the reason they locked down, I'll leave this with you. In 2019, the overnight markets froze. They froze. The Federal Reserve was printing $2 trillion a night because the financial institutions didn't trust each other. But you're trusting them if you've got those brokerage accounts, but they wouldn't trust each other. And they needed to go and produce a lot of money and put in a control grid so when you don't have your money, they're going to be able to control you. So they need more time. Very convenient. COVID happens and trillions of dollars are produced. Maybe about 300, maybe a quadrillion dollars, because you know how there's a multiplier, right? Could have been like $5 quadrillion. But they produce so much money to push it off because they need to put in the AI, they have to put in all the everything. And if you want to know what's going to happen in the rest of the world, just look at China. They're 10 years ahead of us. So please, prove me wrong. Contact me, read my book, share it. And I made it free use because I think we have to know what's about to happen, and I sourced everything. So prove me wrong, because I want my kids, I have 5 kids, I want to be wrong. Because guess what? You know the question, and this is how I'm going to end my presentation, well, your kids are going to go and ask, or your grandkids, what did you do? You know, what did you do in Germany? What did you do? You know what I want? I would love to have that question, because I don't even think they're going to have the opportunity to ask questions. And if you read the Rio State, remember the Rio Conference, environmental, back in 1992? 167 nations signed on saying they wanted to reduce the population to 1 billion people. Isn't that psychotic? And we were all cheering the environment. Yeah, the carbon is you. You're the carbon. Every time you take a breath, it's 40,000 parts per million. You're the carbon that they want to control. So you guys have been great. And please read the paper. If you find information I don't know, share with me, because I want to know. You guys have been great. Thank you.